Module 3, Placing Pipe and Components, covers the following topics: pipe, components, info blocks, and the AutoRoute feature. The first topic in Module 3 is the pipe tool. Before placing pipe, we need to look at and change, as we draw, our spec, our main size, our branch size, and our line number. These must be set before any pipe or piping components can be placed. Once these are set, and we'll leave it at the defaults, we can then go to our pipe tool. Select the pipe tab, and there are several tools that we can take a look at. The first and most important would be whether or not you want double line drafting or single line drafting. And this should be set before the drawing is completed. We can set to single line or double line drafting, which is the default. So let's just zoom up on the side of our drawing before we actually place any components on our equipment. Let's just look at how the pipe tools work. Selecting our pipe tool, ask for a start point and an end point, and a pipe is drawn. We change our pipe size, 8-inch, place pipe, just randomly. We see the pipe. Again, the drawing scale for this drawing is an 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. We actually see the deviation between 4-inch pipe and 8-inch pipe. There's a tool for adding pipe and an elbow. I can just add one elbow or two. I'll just show one. And we can pick a start point, the center of the 90-degree elbow. Ask us which orientation we would like for our elbow, options available, and the default current selection. Then we just say draw a 90-degree elbow. It asks for a side for the elbow, and we can either pick down or up. There is a pipe nipple tool, so when we are down under 2-inch or less, let's go down to a 1-inch pipe size. We can now place a pipe nipple, and it asks whether or not you want it threaded both ends or plain one end. And there is our pipe nipple at 1 inch to scale. We'll go back to 4-inch. Some of the other tools that we have are the pipe ends. So if we need a pipe break, we can actually pick one side of the pipe, the other side of the pipe, and then a distance along the pipe, and it breaks the pipe and shows our pipe break symbols. We can just put in a pipe end symbol or ground or wall penetration symbol. We can select our pipe, other side of the pipe, and then the direction. And it puts in a pipe penetration symbol, showing it either going through the floor or through the wall in this case. Let's set it to single line drafting. Take a quick look. Always ask for when we want the double line. Even though we're in single line, a lot of companies have a starting size of 14 and larger is always drawn as double line, even though it's a single line drawing. So we'll just take the default. Again, set it 4-inch. Let's place some pipe. And now it shows up as a solid, thick line. Pipe with an elbow. Take the default. Point down this time. And now it shows the pipe plus a 90-degree elbow in single line. We'll set it back to our default. Our next topic is the components. So now that we've covered the pipe, we've looked at all the different pipe options, let's look at all the other components. So we have flanges, we have gaskets and bolts, we have all of our different types of valves, from gate valves to globe valves to ball valves, to all of our piping fittings. So our elbows, 90-degree elbows to 45-degree elbows, to reducers, to swedges, to T's and reducing T's and crosses, and things like weldolets, selbelets, and sockelets, all of those types of components that can be placed, all to scale, and all set by our spec, our main size, branch size, and line number. So again, we always make sure we set this and change it as we draw to make sure that we're getting the right components. But let's just take a look at some of the basic components, things like a 90-degree elbow. Let's say I want to put a 90-degree elbow at the end of this pipe. Select our 90-degree elbow tool. The dialog appears and allows us to set the insertion point, either the weld point or the center point, and then the type of elbow that we want placed. And it's a long radius by default. Click Draw 90-degree elbow, and we can pick the end of this pipe. First direction of the elbow, we want to go down or up. We'll go down in this case, and it will attach the elbow to the end of the pipe. We can come down to our sizes. Set our main size to 8-inch, branch size to 6-inch, and then we can select a concentric reducer. Shows us the sizes, and they can be changed, but we're picking up the current sizes, and we'll say OK. And I'll pick this end of the pipe direction, and it now puts in an 8x6. And you'll notice over in our status area that our main size has now been automatically switched to 6-inch from the 8-inch. Let's look at placing a flange on our drawing, so we can select the flanges tool, select a weld neck flange. Select the insertion point, so we'll select the weld point. Click OK. We'll pick the end of the reducer. and the direction. And our 6-inch flange is now placed. Let's place a flange at this end, and we'll include a gasket and a bolt. First, we'll set our pipe size to 8-inch, and then we'll select the flange gasket bolt tool. Again, we'll select the weld point, click OK, pick the end of the pipe, drag to the left, and now it puts in flange and a gasket bolt. These symbols will not plot. They are on a layer called depth points and do not plot, but they are shown so that the drafter can see that the actual gasket and bolts were placed within the drawing. We can place flange off of this elbow here. We can then go to a 4-inch size. So again, I'm changing my size as I draft, pick the flange, and then I can pick the end of the elbow and drag down, and the flange is placed in that orientation. Let's look at placing some valves. So I'll go to my valve tab. All the different valves are displayed. Set it at the flange, gasket, and valve. Gasket, valve, gasket, and flange. So if I had an existing flange that I want to draw from. And then if I just wanted to put in a full complete flange and valve set where it would be the flange, the gasket, the valve, the gasket, and the flange. So let's just put in a valve off of the end of this pipe here. So I'd first set my pipe size. We know that's 6 inches. I have an existing flange, but no gasket. So I would set it to the second item. And then let's just put in gate valve. Pick up the end of the flange, pick the direction, and it now adds the gasket and bolts in. And then it asks, do I want a valve stem? And we can say yes or no. And if we do say yes, what orientation do we want? Plan, side, or rotated? We'll just say side. Say OK. Pick the side we want the hand wheel to show up on. And then it completes the valve. So there's our valve stem, another gasket, and another flange. So placing components is quite simple, just a matter of setting our size and then selecting the components. The next topic is info blocks. So once we've completed a drawing or worked on a drawing, we want to know what size a pipe or a component is. There is, under our settings tab, an item info tool which allows us to go in and select, for instance, the pipe, and it tells me it's 8-inch pipe. It tells me the spec, the line number, and a description. All of this information set up in our spec generator. So a good way of finding out what size components are if we're not sure. Selected my reducer, 8x6, concentric reducer. All of that information is shown. For a more detailed view of a particular component, under the Change tab, we have our Dynamic Attribute Edit tool, which allows us to edit the information shown on a component. It also shows the component name and the file location of where that component is within the software. So if you're looking for the exact file where that pipe is located, it tells us the spec, the location, and the component. We can select Next, and it tells us the information, the dimensional data, all the information regarding that symbol. Very useful if you are looking at editing or adjusting the spec or the material data files. The last topic in Module 3 is the AutoRoute feature. We'll look at placing components automatically, and then we'll look at placing in our drawing the piping in the plan view and in the elevation. So how the AutoRoute feature works is it allows us to, rather than having to pick the end points for instance, placing that elbow, I can have the system automatically do that. So we'll go to our AutoRoute feature, and we'll enable the AutoRoute. It asks if we want to start it now or using the next fitting. I'll just use the next fitting. And now I've set up my sizes. Let's say we'll set it to 8-inch to 6-inch, just for this sample. And then we'll go in and place some pipe. Click our pipe tool, and it places pipe like normal. But now, when I add my next component, let's say we add an elbow to turn down. So draw a 90-degree elbow. I don't have to pick my start point. It's automatically selected as the last point. So all I have to do now is pick the side of the elbow. And the elbow is drawn. I can then pick some pipe. And the start point of the pipe is automatically at the end of the elbow. Place another elbow. This time I'll go to the right. And it automatically places the component. So as long as we know the dimensional data, we can quickly route the pipe. Let's go in and place a valve. I'll select my valve with the flange and gaskets. We'll pick everything. And then we'll pick the gate valve. Again, we'll go to the side. There's the side. It places the flange, gasket, valve, gasket, flange, and places it automatically on the end of the elbow. I can then add a piece of pipe. I can go to my fittings and say do a reducer. Automatically places the reducer. It automatically changes the main and branch size as well. So now if I place some pipe, very easy to do. At any time, we can disable just by going back to our AutoRoute and disable the AutoRoute. We can now place components individually. So let's erase all this extra piping and components. And let's look at adding the pipe to our drawing. So let's place our pipe and fittings and components. We'll start with our elevation. So I'll set my sizes back to 4" to 3" for my branch size, because these are 4" nozzles. And then we can actually go in and start placing the components. If we know all the information, we can actually enable our AutoRoute feature. And we'll start off. So what I'm going to do is we'll draw a piece of pipe with a flange and elbow. We'll come down through a valve down here. We'll come back up with some pipe, and then we'll tie off into the top of this nozzle here with another flange. So we'll pick our flange and gasket tool, select the face of flange, because we're going to mate up with this face of flange, and say OK. Pick the start point, pick the direction, the places, the gasket, bolt, and the flange. I can then go to my fittings, place my 90-degree elbow. We're going to point it down, so that's the correct orientation. Select down, and there is our elbow. We'll put in a piece of pipe, taking it somewhere near the bottom of the drawing. I'm just going to guess. We'll add another 90-degree elbow. And then let's say we want to put in a block valve. We'll put it on this side. And then there is our valve placement, all automatically with that AutoRoute feature. Place another piece of pipe, random length. Then we'll go into our fittings, elbow pointing up, piece of pipe. And I'm just going to take it somewhere up near the top here, because we're not quite sure. What I want to do now is add a flange and an elbow coming off of the top of the vessel. So I need to turn off my AutoRoute feature. So we just disable it, and then we go back to our flanges. Select our flange gasket bolt, pick the top from our nozzle, and our well neck flange is placed. We can then go into our fittings, place a 90-degree elbow, pick the start point, and then the direction. Now we can use an AutoCAD line command just as a trimming feature, and then we can trim off to get it to the center line. So really what we're looking at here now is this center point. So now if I place an elbow in that elevation, we'll be coming up and turning into the drawing. So this is the orientation we want. But I want now to select the center point and then pick my 90-degree elbow. So my 90-degree elbow would be center point, and then the flat side would be pointing down. We can see now the elbow is pointing down. We would have an elbow on the back side of this turning to the right to match up with this one, so another 90-degree elbow. This time we would use this orientation, and again the center point. So we pick our orientation, draw the elbow. We're going to pick up the center of that current elbow, and then the flat side of the elbow is placed. The white circle does not plot. It's just there as a reference so you know it's a 90-degree elbow. And we can use our extend and trim tools to fix any features that need to be extended. And then we can get rid of our construction line, and we can place a piece of pipe between the two elbows to finish off that view. So there is our elevation view, elbow down, turning down, through an elbow, through a valve, through an elbow up, through an elbow going away from us, turning to the side, and then coming down into the top of the vessel. Let's look at doing the plan view of that same feature. So again, we can do a little bit of orthographic. We can grab a line using our AutoCAD and pick up the centers of these flanges to kind of give us an idea of where some of these components are going to be coming from. So there's just some construction lines that I can use as guidelines. We can go to our flanges. Face of flange coming off of a vertical vessel. There's our flange coming off. Go to our fittings. 90-degree elbow. This one would be turning down, looking from the plan view. And we would want the weld point. Pick up the end of the flange, pick the direction, and there's our elbow turning down. So underneath that is a vertical run of pipe. And then if we look at our elevation view, we have the elbow that turns and then goes through the valve. So again, on this view, we would select our 90-degree elbow, select this one for the orientation, and again, center point. Draw the 90-degree elbow, and we want to pick up the center of that existing elbow, and then the direction. Again, we can use our extend and trim tools to extend the lines from that fitting to the existing elbow. And then now we're looking at the top view of the valve. So we'll go to our valve tools, Pick the same valve. Pick the start point, the direction. This time the stem will be in the plan view, so we'll just take the default. And it shows us the hand wheel in the plan view. Now we have this intersection over here where the elbow turns up, or we even place the pipe. We can go to our elbow and pick the center point, and that's the elbow we want. So we can draw that elbow from that intersection back. We would then have an elbow that's turning away, again with center point. We can pick up the center of this existing elbow, give it the direction. We can extend our lines just to finish that off. And then we can add the pipe in between the two fittings. So this is looking down on that piece of pipe. So now we have a flat elbow going to come and turn to go into this one. We can place the elbow. It'll be a flat elbow. By center point, using my construction lines I placed, pick up the intersection, one side, the other side, and there's our elbow. We then have an elbow that turns down into the flange. So we can select this item, center point again, and we can pick up our center of our nozzle. And there is our elbow. We can use our trim tools to trim out some of these features, add the pipe in. I can then erase my construction lines that I had and finish off my pipe run with the length of pipe between elbows. And now we're complete. So there is the piping for our plan view, and then the piping for the elevation. Let's save our drawing. This concludes the topics covered in Module 3. Please review Module 3 or select the next module.